For you general ed teachers, I wanted to give you some strategies and ways for you to support the deaf and hard of hearing students that are in your classroom. This video will give you strategies, tips, and also discuss problems that deaf and hard of hearing students struggle with in general education classrooms. The best class setup is in a U shape. That way the student can see everyone and no one is talking behind the student. That kind of setup is not always easy because of how much space is in the classroom. If your students sit in rows, then the best place for a deaf ed student to sit is going to be near the front, where they can hear the teacher, and sitting in the most quiet place in the front will help. If the student is sitting in the front, they're able to see the teacher, the board, and the overhead if the teacher is using it. If the teacher is talking, the student can look at the teacher's mouth and do a little bit of lip reading. Some students that are deaf and hard of hearing do read lips, some don't. Sitting in the front gives that student the additional support to read lips. When you, the teacher, are standing at the front of the classroom, please remember not to turn your back while you're talking. If your back is turned, then that deaf or hard of hearing student can't read your lips. It's harder for them to hear, and they can't see your face. Some other issues that deaf and hard of hearing students have in the classroom is sound issues. Sound issues can be a variety of things. It could be reverberation. It could be the background noises. It could be the sound equipment's not working right. The hearing aid batteries have died. The cochlear implant batteries have died. Sound issues can be almost anything. One thing that you, the teacher, can do to help with the first one, reverberation, is to put curtains and rugs in your classroom on the floor. That will stop the sound from reflecting on the walls and on the floor. Another problem is the hearing aid batteries die. You, the teacher, have a lot of things to do anyway, and we understand that. But if maybe every 2 weeks you remind your student, or you ask your student, do you have your hearing aid batteries? How many do you have? Checking to see how many batteries the student has can prevent them from not having their hearing when they're in school. Because if the battery dies in class, they can just go change the battery and everything's fine. Same thing for the cochlear implant batteries. Make sure the student has plenty of batteries so that they can use their hearing equipment. Another problem is sometimes the FM system's not working right because maybe it wasn't plugged in overnight and charged. Once that happens, the student is without hearing with that equipment. So we want to make sure that every night we plug it in and we don't forget. If you have a substitute teacher Remind your student to let the sub know to plug it in. Put in your sub folder about plugging in the equipment. We never want to forget to plug in that equipment so the student can use it the next day. Another problem with the FM system is that sometimes a student is carrying it all around to different classes and they drop it and something breaks. If that happens, please immediately call your itinerant teacher so that she can get a new FM system or she can get it fixed for you. Background noises are also a problem for deaf and hard of hearing students. In an average classroom, the background noises are about 50 decibels. The human voice is spoken between 55 and 70 decibels. So the student has to listen through noise so that they can hear the teacher's instructions. Sometimes background noise is hard to eliminate. So what you can do is, if you notice that the background noise will get louder, take a second and let the students get their papers and books or whatever is making all of the noise, and then start moving on with your directions. Deaf and hard of hearing students can learn how to read and how to write, but the problem is they're always behind because of limited vocabulary. Having that limited vocabulary means that that student will have a hard time comprehending what they read, have a hard time expressing themselves in written form, and also have a hard time using reading to learn new information. One thing that's very important, if you'll notice right now, is captioning. Deaf and hard of hearing students need captioning. Not all of them will be able to read it, and it will be fast, but if they can see it, see the words, and pick up that vocabulary, then they have access to the information that your hearing students have. Captioning is very important because if the student can't hear what they're watching, then they'd be able to read it. And that's just equal access for your deaf and hard of hearing students. It's not the best, but it helps. If you have any more questions about how to service your deaf and hard of hearing students, please feel free to email me, contact me, or anyone in the deaf education department.